So you're getting ready to scale. We've been talking about it all month. Well, guess what? You're going to need a team because you can't go it alone. Hi, welcome back to Blunt Force Business. I'm Brian LaFauci.
I'm Patrick Marino.
And today we're going to talk about scaling again, but this time we're digging into the fact that you can't scale without a team. And we're going to give you 3 blunt force facts that you need to consider when looking to prepare your team to take on the new work of scaling your business. Let's do it. Let's do it. All right. Blunt force fact number 1 is you got to lose control to find success.
One of the hardest things for a company to do, especially when you're an early startup and it's just like you, is to take what you do and you find really important to you and have somebody else do it. That's hard. But if you don't do that, then you're going to end up making mistakes eventually. If you try and scale, you end up taking on too much.
I know you didn't like it, but like I said before, Steve Jobs never sold me my iPhone when he was alive. You know,
whatever that means.
Whatever that means. I love you. All right, blunt force fact number 2 is decisive leaders drive your business growth.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it kind of works with the first one, where you have to have that ability as a leader to recognize where you need help and to delegate, right? And so, if you can't do that, then you're gonna fail. So
delegate, train, and decentralize your command, right?
Perfect.
Blunt force fact number 3 is Tommy can't throw a ball and catch it on his own.
That's a little bit of a deep dive into Gisele Bündchen.
New England Patriots.
But the analogy I use a lot, especially when I feel like I'm overwhelmed, is I've got too many balls in the air, right? Because if you've got too many, you're juggling too many balls, eventually you're going to drop one. the peanut gallery like that one. And so like having teammates will be there when you drop one, right?
Teammates catch
exactly.
drop balls.
If you don't have a team,
you're
then
catching
you're
my balls
drop
all the
some.
time.
Exactly. Let's go back to Steve Jobs again. What does Steve Jobs say?
He doesn't sell me my iPhone.
All right. I like that one better than the balls dropping, catching.
So today we're going to help you prepare for growth by first putting your team in place, or at least having a plan to put this team in place to grow. And this is where companies fail all the time is they get too scared to pull the trigger and grow to a point where they are, one, overwhelmed, right? Because now they've taken on so much and they're trying to still hold on to it. And they want to wait till they get this magical point where they got all this money and then we can hire someone else. And what ends up usually happening is, 1, there's failure, stress, problems because we have been too slow to pull the trigger. And this is a scary move, and I understand that. This is one of the scariest things people can do is like, how do I bring it, how and when? I think the key word here is when. When do you bring in the team that is going to make this thing happen? And then how do you then ensure that that team is successful? And I think the when and the how is through blunt force fact number 2, and we'll get to that in a minute, which is really the importance of training to a standard and then letting go, right? Setting the left and right limits and then letting go and saying, okay, now, go do that on your own, and I'm here to support you, but you can make these decisions because you're now like that first blunt force fact. Losing control is so difficult when you've created something, built it from the ground up, managed all the components of it yourself, and now you're about to say, "Here you go." It's hard,
and it's
hard for me. It's hard for everyone.
It's not just the losing. So control, I think there's 2 ways of looking at control. One is the way that you just talked about it, where it's like quality control, right? It's like, I know how to do this. I am the expert and I do a kick-ass job, but there's only so much I can do. So I'm going to bring in somebody to do some of either a part of it or do all of it somewhere else, right? Use my method and do it.
Right.
The other way of looking at this is, okay, here's how much I make, and now I'm going to give some of that away.
Yeah.
right? And that is, I think, as big a factor for especially people who are an early startup, who are just going to be like, all right, I am used to making this much money, and now I have to give away a significant portion if I'm going to hire the right people.
Or you're going to take a loan out and invest to grow, which is also scary because now we know that
on debt too.
Yeah, we're going to take on some debt, and we're going to say, all right, I'm going to take on 6 months worth of debt that I think it's going to cost me to pay this person before they are actually earning their keep, so to speak, right?
But the financial part of it's really difficult because like you are like and this can speak to the different phases that people are in their life too. If you're a little bit older, do you have the financial capacity to take on that either extra debt or to take a hit while it's getting to the point where it needs to get?
Right.
And that's investing in new equipment, that's investing in new products or services, but that's also here, right? It's like I'm hiring, I am going to take a financial hit here. Can I afford to do that? If you do this correctly, which is I think the way you would probably say this, is to you build this into the plan.
Yeah.
Right? You build this into the business plan. So you're never going backwards. You're building it in from the beginning. You realize at this point, I'm going to start off with this team. I'm going to take here's the amount of income I have coming in. I'm going to take a certain amount of that right from the beginning and put that towards extra staff that they're going to help me grow and help me do this at a better job, at a better rate. Or you can do it from the other perspective, which is grow and then have to bring someone in, which is sometimes harder.
I think it's way harder. And one of the reasons I'll point to is if you look at how this plays out in practicality, if you as the business owner decides to wait and delay this start, here is inevitably what's going to happen. And I'd be willing to hit me on 19 dealer on this one, right? Like I know there's a one or a two coming up, right?
I mean,
there's a blackjack reference, but
I've had this experience, so I think it's a pretty safe bet.
Right. So what's going to happen is you're going to be so overwhelmed with work that the key part that needs to happen with this next person, which is training, right? So that way we can relinquish control, won't be possible. Because there's only so many hours in a day. And if I have all these deliverables, now I'm not going to fail on them. So you get stuck in this moment where you have to make these extremely difficult decisions, which like most times no one's going to say, I'm not going to deliver that piece of work. I'm not going to do the work. So what happens is we rush training. And when we rush training, what's important to us doesn't get conveyed. The key skill sets don't get taught. And inevitably we're not building the right environment or team to do blunt force fact number 2, which is to put someone out there who's confident in the left and right limits and can just make decisions. And they're going to be executed the way you want to execute them.
There's got to be a balance though too, right, Brian's? Because like what part of the challenge with eliminating your control over everything by bringing somebody else in is that at the beginning, it's like if I make a mistake, I made a mistake.
Right.
Right? It's like almost like easier to accept your own mistakes than it is to accept somebody else's mistakes. Right?
Yeah, and there will be mistakes.
Well, that's the point.
And you're going to have to retrain.
The point I'm making is that if you hire somebody else, they're going to make mistakes.
Of course.
There are going to be balls dropped. There are going to be things that happen that are out of your control. And they feel worse when they're out of your control sometimes. Because you're like, there's nothing I could have done about that. Because, or I could have trained more or whatever it is. But like, sometimes it's harder when it's out of your control. It's like, if I'd have been there, you know what I mean? Like, even if I'd made the mistake, I would have felt better about it, But like, I think that there's going to be a balance there where you can't have perfection. Don't let perfection be don't let perfection be the obstacle to progress in this case. You're going to have to relinquish control. That person is going to make mistakes. You have to have a contingency plan for those mistakes. Right? Especially if you hire somebody younger who doesn't have your experience.
Yeah.
And you can do the best you can. This happens all the time, right? This happens all the time. You bring in somebody new, in the back of your head how many mistakes you made to get to this point, and you remember most of them. Mm-hmm. And then they make a mistake and you're like, oh shit, I made that same mistake.
I did that too.
And like that's something you can relate to the person and give them confidence. It's like,
right.
And then you incorporate it into your training. Yeah. But you're not going to be perfect.
No, there is no perfect. And a lot of this is about timing, right? Like, we talk about that. Like when do you make this hire? if you're going to ask me on a continuum, and I'm almost always making it early, where I'm taking a little bit of a financial risk up front, and I'm trying to manage that risk, right? Sometimes we can be a little creative with that, how we bring someone on board. In an optimal situation, maybe sometimes we can bring that ideal candidate on board part-time at first. Those are great. If we can do that, that's fantastic, and then show them the pathway. Can't always do that. Some positions require, like, hey, we're going to require to make this full, and then maybe you are making that more significant investment in it. But I'm going to lean to two reasons. One, I believe that by bringing the person on earlier, two things happen. One, you're creating the standard of who's going to run this program. So you're not building a program on your shoulders, right? Which is important. We're building a program on the shoulders of another leader that's going to take it over and run with it. And then two, along with that, we are also putting someone in place who now are doubling our efforts as part of their work, job description, are doubling our efforts to grow the revenue. So now revenue, the one thing you got to keep in mind is that in a not even a perfect world, in a semi-perfect world, whatever target you were going to hit going out there and growing, the revenue should double. It actually should probably do more than double, because more than likely you're not giving like 50% of your day to that one thing. So technically you should see a mass multiplier in that. And it should allow you to hit those revenue goals a lot quicker. So you should be able to, way before that 6 month, let's just use the 6 month time frame as an example. Like if I say, all right, I'm gonna look to secure money so I can keep this person on board for 6 months. Way before that, you should be seeing the fruits of that. Like, all right, couple months in, like, oh wow, they brought in 2 contracts. That one contract is gonna takes care of their salary. The rest,
Sometimes it's a little longer term though, because what you're talking
Absolutely.
about, you're talking about short term, and like that's almost like more of almost like a sales thing, where it's like they're responsible for that. But like a lot of people are not directly, as much as we want people to be directly related to revenue, not everybody's directly related to revenue. So your investment in that person and what they're doing might take a longer time to pay off.
Yes.
The payoff might come from the company's ability to do more because these processes are taken care of.
Absolutely.
Right. And so like that can be harder to swallow for a startup that needs cash right now. And that might affect the type of person you bring in, who might be more related to revenue. So a lot of people take on salespeople who are more commission related, and then they figure it out later, right? We'll figure out the back end.
Right.
That's a lot of companies do that. We're going to sell.
Yeah.
We're going to figure out how to do it after. Whereas like what you're advocating is the slower build. You're not advocating for a fast build up. You're advocating for a slower, sustainable build up. You're not going to hit your goals sooner. You're going to hit your goals later, but you're going to do it in a safer way that's going to protect you
you're also
in
going to
the
hit your
longer
goals
term.
later, because on a balance sheet, you're taking on an expense, right? A profit. You're taking on this expense, but you're doing it because we have to acknowledge that the only way to grow is to take your bandwidth and give it to someone. You know what I mean? To get you can't be the leader of or executor of all things if you're going to grow. That doesn't. It's not to say that there isn't a comfortable space where people say, "Hey, this is what I do. I make plenty of money doing it.
Right.
I don't want anything else," and that's different.
Right. Although that's not what we believe, you and I.
No.
Right.
But if you're that person, then we're not really talking to you in this conversation. This conversation is...
we're going to try and convince you that you shouldn't be that person.
Yeah, you shouldn't be
We're
that
not going to
person.
do that here, but we shouldn't be.
Right now.
We want to grow. Grow.
Loser.
Grow hard.
Just kidding. That's not nice. But the reality is that if you're going to do that, you can't be all. You can't be the be all end all. You have to really embrace, believe in, and see the fact that the statement, your people will make it's your people that'll make your business, not you, is 100% true. From when you decide to grow and scale, it will be the people. It won't be you. And those will be the people that should, that will carry the load on a daily basis and make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. One of the costs. I don't know if it's time to talk about. I don't know if this is part of it. Like one of the costs of this is just the process of finding people. But that's a real cost. And like that in my own journey, where I had people, and then we went through the pandemic, and I had to get rid of them, and then I tried to hire people after the pandemic, and that was disaster. Mm-hmm. Those were costs.
Yeah.
The hiring process is a cost.
Yes.
Because it's going to take you away from, especially if it's just you or like you have a really small team at the beginning. Mm-hmm. It's going to take you and your small team away from the day-to-day of doing the job.
Right.
And it's a upfront cost that's going to help in the long term. But it is something that you have to get over and you have to be okay with.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then you put yourself in the situation where.
Right. Right. It's a risk. And it's like starting up a business, right? Yeah. Eventually, you need to be comfortable.
It is
to make
risk,
that
and there's going to
jump.
be a reward.
Yeah, you have to be comfortable to make the jump, and the step of building your team to grow is almost identical to the steps that lead up to a business launch. It's like, all right, we're here at the cliff. We talk about the cliff a lot, right? Mm-hmm. We're here at the cliff. We've tried to shorten the gap of the jump of the cliff, right? We tried to put as many nets at the bottom of the cliff. But now, if we don't jump, we're going to teeter on the edge of that cliff, and we don't want to drop balls into the cliff.
Did I buy my iPhone from Steve Jobs?
No.
No. That's good.
3 blunt force facts.
Okay, good.
3 blunt force facts I'm preparing a scale about in team building. Blunt force fact number 1 is you got to lose control to find success. You got to let it go. That's
let it go. Let it go.
Blunt force fact number 2
deep dive
is you got to create decisive leaders to drive your business growth. And that happens through time and training. Can't do that if you're overwhelmed. And blunt force fact number 3
my husband cannot fucking throw the ball and catch the ball.
Tommy Titletown can't throw and catch the ball. You can't do everything either. And so you need to build that team of receivers out there where you can throw the ball, they can catch it and run with it.
And when you're juggling, if you juggle, there's too many balls, eventually one's going to drop. So you might as well have someone ready.
Have someone ready to catch
Someone ready to catch it for you.
Awesome. Get your team ready to grow. I'm Brandon Fauci.
Patrick Marino.
Till next time.
Thank you.